Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you?
Very good, and I think our technology is going to work a little bit better today. Yesterday we had to improvise, but we had a lot of our loyal listeners and viewers to tune in to our late program yesterday, and we're going to be following up on this because obviously Syria is still a big thing in the news. But the atmosphere is completely different today. Completely different. Does that mean policies are changing and we have no more worries? No, because that would be letting the guard down. But this morning, if you look at the instantaneous analysis of what's going on, and which I do, I look toward the markets and seeing what's happened. Gold is down sharply. That means internationally, no big deal going on. Stock market's up high. There's no worries. The trade war may have ended. But there was a lot of optimism this morning, and then we heard talk about even comments from the different people. Mattis and others kept saying things that maybe we, and even Trump, maybe we. I've never said when I'm going to do this, and we can do this anytime. It was he more or less toned down his aggressiveness. So, but here we are. We're still out, facing up a lot of weaponry in the Middle East. That didn't all go away, and we have to deal with that. But I think there's a lot of people who supported our position. They're the unknowns. You don't hear from them, and we want to sort of concentrate on that today. Who are the people that might be helping us? We know who all the enemy is. We know how powerful the neocons are, and how powerful the media is, and on and on. But there's a lot of other people. There are groups. We're not the only ones, talking about this. There are some other libertarian groups, and we know that ideas have consequences, and there may have been some people responding to our requests of calling their congressman. There's conversation up there, and Trump's the kind of guy that might well be influenced one way or the other. He talks to Hawks one day, maybe he'll listen to the other the next day. So that certainly public opinion had an effect on Obama. I'm not saying that is true, but what I'm saying is worth the effort to encourage the people who will stand up, and some of the people that have stood up. It's not a political stunt because politically, it's pretty well set that if you want to get ahead in this country financially and all this, it's to support the warmongers. War is important. War, you earn a lot of money and this sort of thing. So today I'd like to talk about the people who may have changed the tone a little bit and give them a little encouragement.
Yeah, ironically, because the media is so lockstep, because they don't ask any questions, they go along with the war machine, they go along with the president, they go along with the propaganda. Because that's the case, when there's an accidental appearance of someone with a different perspective, that person actually gets more interest, more attention, maybe than they would normally get. So there's a little silver lining there, and we saw with the Tucker Carlson show, so many people watched that show. The video went viral. The video of the monologue, he followed up with a great piece with Glenn Greenwald yesterday. So because it's so dominant with the war hawks, the warmongers, when someone breaks through, it gets more attention. And in fact, we have a video of another great truth teller, I think. He was the ambassador of the UK to Syria, so he knows what he's talking about. He was on the BBC, which has been all for war. And what he had to say shocked the hosts, but he spoke truth. So why don't we go ahead and cue this up if we can and listen to a little bit of Peter Ford.
I don't think that Assad is in the least worried that the inspectors would find out his guilt, because he's probably not guilty, at least on this occasion. I mean, we have to engage our brains as well as our emotions here, not be stampeded by those videos which are described as being unverified, but which, by dint of being repeated over and over and over again, come to acquire a spurious credibility. We have to ask ourselves, what are the sources of the information on which we're in this stampede to war? They're twofold. And I'm sorry, but the media are falling down on the job in investigating this. The sources are the Syrian American Medical Society, which is a pro-Islamist propaganda outfit based in the United States.
So you're saying these
funded by the
pictures have been,
CIA.
are you saying these pictures have been staged? Are you saying that people haven't died, that people haven't been affected?
Yes, in all probability, the incidents have been staged. Come on.
So that's a very powerful statement that he's making. And here's a person who's been there as an ambassador, who knows Syria very well, and he's simply saying the media is falling down on the job. It's not asking any questions. Just look objectively at the source of the information that this even took place. There's only a couple sources. The white helmets, who were created by a former British intelligence officer, and they're funded by the US and UK government, and an Islamist propagandist outfit based in the US. These are the only two sources of those videos. And the BBC interviewer is incredulous. Are you claiming that these are staged? And Ambassador Ford said, yes, I am. By all accounts, they may very well be staged. So that's a real breakthrough, I think.
Well, I do, and I think he, as an individual, is very important because he's British. He's been there, and our audience really is seeking the truth, which we try to provide. And we have noticed in our reporting that when you have somebody who's been on the ground, who's been over there, we get a lot more attention because of a lot more credibility. And I really think that's one of our most important goals, is to seek out the truth, because what we're listening to are the lies. We talked a little bit yesterday about how many wars and how many problems we get into because our government lies to us, and this is just another example. So I think that working on the assumption that getting the truth out is the most powerful weapon we have, because truth will win out in the end. I think the American people, want the truth. I really do. But they get locked into the propaganda, and truth to them sometimes is, oh, what you're doing is you're in denial and you don't want to admit those Russians are coming to get us, and Saddam Hussein would have bombed us, and Gaddafi would have gotten us, and they would have destroyed our currency, and all these things. They believe that, and some of them think it's the truth, but there's another group that use it purely to promote their propaganda of one world government and the militancy and the superiority of the American empire.
Indeed, and if you just, as he said, step back, cooler heads, think about it, take a deep breath. The U.S. threatened war on Syria just hours after the so-called attack took place. There's no way they could have verified that there was an attack or who was responsible in that period of time. It was literally impossible. As we've pointed out, all the evidence comes from the White Helmets and the Syrian American Medical Association. But the other thing, and this is important if I can just have a second to bring it up, Dr. Paul, because a lot of people will cite, well, hey, hold on, the World Health Organization has reported that 500 patients are being treated for chemical exposure in the region. And that sounds pretty damning, that sounds pretty bad. But what is their source? And this is really interesting. This is how the web of the NGOs works. Médecins Sans Frontières, the Doctors Without Borders, from their own website, they're the source of this 500 being treated. From their own website, they admit that they train and support the White Helmets. So they're tied in with the White Helmets, and they also admit that they have no presence on the ground in Syria. So what do those two things tell us? They are tied at the hip, they support the one group, the White Helmets, is the only claim, and two, they have no independent way of verifying on the ground. So essentially, they're like money launderers for information for the White Helmets, getting into the UN, getting into the World Health Organization. That's how these lies percolate through the UN and cause an impetus for war. And
from their viewpoint, the sooner they create more chaos and have a military answer to these problems, the better off for them. The longer this is delayed, the more likely is that we're going to help get the truth out, on what's going on. And this can be looked at, in the Skripal episodes, the OPCW, the chemical weapons watchdog, is coming up. And they're saying they don't have the evidence. And how about Julia Skripal?
Yeah.
She's fitting into our scenario because we can't. Nobody's allowed to talk to her, and nobody who has any understanding of this gas that they said that was used could possibly have been the case. So now that truth is out, and the truth is leaking out even on this one. I'm surprised because there were some people who were sort of on our side but said, well, the one thing is we can't deny the fact that there are 30 people been gassed because we saw the pictures. We should know better. Look at the pictures they put up before the Iraq War. You know, they fudge anything instantaneously, and they know the answer, and they're ready to use military weapons against the guilty party. We ought to be cautious, because that's one thing, if nothing else, that I learned in the years I was in Washington, is to be very, very cautious of everything the government tells us. And they're either not smart, or they've been misled themselves, or they're part of a conspiracy to purposely mislead us. They do it in economics, they do it in foreign policy, so people should be skeptical. That doesn't mean that anytime somebody opens your mouth, you yell and scream, you lie, and you know what? No, but you should say, show us the proof. Show us the proof. We can take a day to look at this and show us the proof. But in this case, the truth, I think, is coming out faster now than it did in 2002 and 2003. Getting ready to go in Iraq, it was a little bit slower figuring out exactly what was happening. But today, you know, with the internet and with people speaking out, and it's just great to see somebody like Tucker get on the air and speak the truth. So we need more of that, not less.
And you mentioned the Skripal case, because that really is interesting. The OPCW, which is the body that's tasked with investigating this, of course, they were prevented for the first 10 days from even going and investigating, but they were finally given permission by the British government to investigate. They came out with a report, I believe, today, and the UK government is saying, oh, look, they've confirmed everything we said, they confirmed. But it's not true if you read the report, at least a public report that they put out, because they never said Novichok. That word does not appear in the report. It only says they found a toxic substance. That could be anything. So the UK government is trying to spin this as much as they can, but the evidence, at least from what we see from the OPCW report, is not there. I think that's why May is so anxious to start attacking Syria. She's desperate to change the subject. You know,
and we shouldn't think we're as lone as it seems like we are. You know, we work here and we try to get this information out. But for instance, we have a conference coming up, and we're doing it with the Future Freedom Foundation with Bumper Hornberger. And there are other organizations like they're independent individuals who have their own websites, and you find a lot of those articles that defend this position. So we shouldn't say and be downtrodden because we're not in the media. You know, right now, you know, especially with what's going on with social media and with a distrusting government, they're going to be looking for this. And we have to realize that everything we say and do is even monitored on social media, but that doesn't mean they're going to close us down. I really don't. I believe so strongly that technology is powerful enough to even confront the technology that the government has. Yes, we have to be concerned about it, but being smart and getting around it means that these ideas can get out. So what I'd like to do is encourage the American people just to look for them, endorse and help the people that are trying to get this message out. And of course, I'm very grateful that people pay attention to what we're doing. And I think that helps people in an indirect way, and you can never measure it. We have no idea whether 10 people called their congressman in the last 2 days at yours and my urging, or whether 5,000 did. Yeah. And you know, from working in the office, if you have received 100 spontaneous phone calls or emails, spontaneous, not organized, that takes a certain position, you know there's a bunch of people out there. So numbers are not as critical as people think. And I think some of that's going on, because I am convinced that when people have a choice, I think they would vote for peace. Why would the 18 to the 25-year-old person, even in the military, I've been under those circumstances, and I wasn't looking for a war to fight. I was wondering, what in the thunder's going on? And even though you get the really wild hawks in the military people join for various reasons, economic reasons, patriotic reasons, and to defend the country. Yeah. And sometimes they're very shocked. remember just recently with the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, the people who had joined the National Guard, they thought they were going to guard this country.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll join the Coast Guard and protect our borders. And the Coast Guard's over in the Persian Gulf and in China, the South China Sea. So no, I think that there's a lot of open support for there, and they don't know about it. And that's why we should continue to do this and encourage other people to speak out, even one-on-one, or a person with a list of 100 people of their friends that they can connect with. That has a significant, and we can spread messages faster now than ever before. When I first went to Washington, it was through newsletters. I'd have a project and the monetary issues. I'd get in touch with all the newsletters right here, and it would take a week or two. It did have an effect, but very, very slow. So we should look to these individuals, and that was my point on this, emphasize that people, they're out there, and they're on our side, and they're very credible, and if we can find more people who have had the personal experience, of this region to express their opinion.
That's true, and the mainstream media wants to ignore these groups as much as they possibly can. And just off the top of my head, when you started talking about other sources, and I know this is nowhere near exhaustive, but a couple of things came to mind. 21st Century Wire, that's where Vanessa Beeley works, and they have people on the ground there. They know Syria. The New Eastern Review, I just put up a great piece from Tony Cartolucci today on the Ron Paul Institute website that I encourage people to look at. Ask some very important questions that the media doesn't ask. The Blogmire, never heard of it until this Skripal event took place. This is a fellow who lives close by, who's written some terrific articles we've had on our website. Moon of Alabama, of course, goes without saying, does a lot of great work. So there is a lot out there. The mainstream media doesn't want you to even think about it. But you should go check some of these sites out. In conclusion, I would say here's the thing that's crazy. Even if Assad did it, he gassed these 30 people, 40 people, he killed them all. So think about how insane Trump's response is. We're going to kill Syrians to teach Syrians to stop killing Syrians. Now, if that makes any sense to anyone, I don't know, maybe I need a shrink. But anyway, the main thing, we haven't talked about this in a few days, but it's still very important. If anything, this is why it's so important. We have this event coming up, this conference on the 29th of April. I think we're 82% sold out, Dr. Paul. So there are few tickets left, but obviously this issue is going to be talked about there. We need to get together. Honestly, get your tickets while you can, because people will be turned away, unfortunately. That's just how it is.
Well, very good. And I want to thank our audience and our viewers for tuning in today. And also that we have to emphasize the fact that we should be talking about it. We should emphasize the other side because it can have influence. We should not ever be dejected and say, oh, we can't say anything. Yeah, sometimes you can look at it. I was in Washington, and one vote, sometimes by myself, people say, well, why do you waste your time? Well, sometimes one vote is valuable. So it is. But just remember, the ideas are the most important. This, again, once more, emphasizes the non-interventionist foreign policy, which is the most important. We didn't even talk today so much about the Constitution and the morality of the war and all. We were talking about the practicalities, but we still have the issues. But I do believe that superficially the American people do respond emotionally to the propaganda. And if you can carelessly use the word propaganda and propagandize for peace, and yes, what the founders gave us, restraint on the executive branch, if that would have worked, we wouldn't be in this mess. That was subtly and steadily eroded ever since the World War II and even longer, where the executive branch gained more power. And when presidents say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to bomb this country, and I am not even going to ask the Congress about this, that is a danger too. And ultimately, that has to be fixed. But first, we have to get people believing and understanding what non-intervention is, and it's not unpatriotic and it's not dangerous. It makes a lot of sense. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.